To welcome you tonight to the August board meeting, and I welcome all those people in attendance here as well as on video later on. If you'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And it should be noted that I have Director Abb's proxy this evening. And everybody else is in attendance. So, celebrating success. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. We're here to recognize Judy Griffin. If you would come forward, please. Show yourself on television.
Judy.
So we had a nomination here that we'd like to read for you. Judy volunteered to help with the longest day golf tournament, quote, any way I can, unquote. She quickly coordinated with the liaison from the Alzheimer's Association and developed a sponsorship sales plan. Judy went out with Siobhan several afternoons and sold sponsorships on a very tight schedule. Not only did her efforts result in several $1,000s in sponsorships, she also shared her business contacts with others on the team. She is also assisting with our signing and tournament day duties. Judy's attitude is always upbeat and friendly. She's a stellar representative of the POA, and she simply lacks the word no in her vocabulary. I'm so proud to have her on both our tournament team and also the POA team. She sets the standard for exceptional customer service, and that's from member Susan Nuttall, who nominated Judy. If you could join me in giving her a round of applause. Little gift for you. Thank you for being a great employee.
Good job, Judy. It also should be noted that between new business number 10 and 11, there will be an addition. Approval minutes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the July 19, 2018 board work session meeting minutes.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Two.
Okay, no opposed. I'll entertain a motion to approve the July 26, 2018 Board of Directors regular meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. As was noted at last month's meeting, we just want to make sure that it was noted in the minutes here today. There was an executive session on July 19, 2018, and that was to the appeal of a property owner's suspension of membership privileges. And after a discussion in closed session, that member's privileges were not suspended.
Okay. Financial report, Dwayne?
Yes, ma'am. This will be the income statement, July 2018 year-to-date, and we'll start with the POA. The gross profit on the POA against budget is 207 negative. Again, we've shown this trend pretty much all year every time we've had a meeting. Golf is weather-related, 209. Prior year, here it is, the change is a negative 321. A positive on this number is food and beverage operation was 433. Lake Point was open 3 months in 2017. And negative to this is past due collections, 145. We had a large windfall last year. Legal brought in 80% of that number, and accounting brought in the balance. Donations, again, we talked about the skill part donations from the Walton Family Foundation, 170,000, and Fly Tires had an 8,000 contribution, so that makes up the difference there. And investments makes up the other negative, 382 less than this year, less investments. Operating expenses, the same POA statement, positive 449 against budget. Labor is 218 of that number, savings and open positions, as we've talked about before. Equipment and tool savings, 121,000, excuse me. Maintenance and repair savings, 110. Other across the board is 88,000. And health insurance is the negative to that number, 143. We're self-funded. Looking at again to the comparison from prior year, labor was 641 higher this year. Food and beverage accounted for 53% of that. Again, we didn't have food and beverage last year. Other budget changes across the division makes up that balance in labor. Health insurance against last year was 488. We really had a low claims the first 7 months of 2017. And utilities is 94,000 negative. Food and beverage, again, we didn't have 40% of that number. And supplies, 61,000. Looking at the EBITDA, with all of those numbers, we're 242,000 better than budget. At the end of 7 months, 242,009. Moving to water. Gross profit, we've seen this trend also with all the building permits and the additional usage. 610 better than budget, growth and more usage and connections. Last year, 441 change. Operating expenses, small number, 78,000 less. Health insurance, 28,000 makes up the bigger number. Credit card charges, we got more people using credit cards, and so the charges are a little higher, 23,000. And supplies, 14, meter installs for all the meters we're installing. And a lot of that's meter materials. It's not actually the meters, the new meters. It's meter materials like sand and gravel and other things that go in with that also. The prior year comparison is 363 negative. Equipment and tools is 118 of that number. Maintenance and supplies, 70. Again, water distribution equipment. Health insurance, 62,000, and labor, 42,000. EBITDA for the water is 532,000 better than budget. At the end of 7 months, water utility is better than budget by 526. That concludes my report. Any questions?
I assume we're going to continue to see a drawdown of investments.
Yes.
If we even have any investments
Yes.
left, and these are going into capital projects.
Correct.
So for the year, we'll see much less by way of investment balance, and also much less by way of interest
Correct.
income.
Yes.
Is the assessment contribution per amenity a standard number or is it a floating number?
We don't
And by
budget.
that I mean, when I say floating, that from month to month, you have, let's say, revenues at this level and the next month at this level, so that the assessment contribution to balance those varies from month to month.
Well, we really don't budget amenities with assessments. Prior boards have done that. Assessments just go into one department, and whatever the costs are, that supports those departments.
But it would seem to me that it might be more, informative if we looked at the amount of assessments that are being accessed by the various amenities. For instance, recreation is operating at a particular level with real revenue and real expenses. And the difference between that revenue and those expenses comes out of assessments, correct?
Yes. That's
Okay,
what's funded.
so if we saw the assessment contribution balancing assessments and revenues, or revenues and expenses from month to month, it would give us a pretty good picture of what portion of the assessments are being eaten up by that amenity. Okay, so as that assessment portion increases, we can see things getting more and more out of balance without having to manipulate the numbers.
Well, and I think that the way you ended that sentence, manipulating the numbers, is.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
No, I'm not picking. Anytime you have an allocation of expenses, labor, so forth, it can be interpreted as being arbitrary. And so do we allocate, you know, 400, 500, $1 million to the pools to prop them up, or do we keep them in one central location, one department, which is what we've done for the last several years, which allows us to have a good comparison from year to year? I'm not saying that some places don't do this. My only concern is I've experienced where the assessments were not allocated one year, then the board decided to allocate them the next year, and then 2 years later decided to no longer allocate them. And doing year-to-year comparisons were very challenging. I would rather look at the departments on their own, let them stand on their own 2 feet. We know that we have to subsidize most if not all of them. And we know where that money is coming from, but if you add in, you know, you can really debate as to how much should be given to each department, and it becomes very arbitrary, and it really impacts, in my opinion, it impacts how you analyze the performance of the department.
I was just thinking, though, that if we had a budget allocation for assessment support, if you would, for each department, okay, then we would be able to look at the departments and how much they are actually forecasting, and the accuracy with which they are forecasting how much of the assessments they are going to consume.
I mean, this is definitely a conversation or discussion that we could have as we enter into the 2019 budget cycle.
Okay.
But I would caution you in that, and I think we've worked together long enough where you know that I have a huge aversion to allocations because they can tend to be arbitrary, capricious.
Yes.
You know, how do you determine how much? I would rather the departments stand on their own feet. We know that we have to subsidize most of them, but let them stand on their own 2 feet, and that we can judge. Because to go to a property owner, if a property owner says, "Well, we broke even at the pools," well, we really didn't, because we had to allocate
Right.
$500,000. I don't know what the money number is. $500,000 of assessments to make it so it would break even. And if we hadn't, you know, to me, it really takes away from the financial analysis. I'd rather look at it in a pure way, knowing that ultimately that's going to happen. When it's all consolidated together. Well,
as I'll defer any further comments, but there are some items on the agenda coming up later on that I think that the perspective as to how much of the assessments support each of the amenities is relevant in our discussions, and so I'll just defer for the time being.
okay.
Any other questions for Dwayne?
No, hit the button.
Okay, if not, response to the last month's open forum. One member requested a report from the July 19th executive session. Another had concerns regarding golf in Bella Vista, and those were taken care of. Open forum at this time. Do we have anyone for open forum? If not, we'll move right along into joint advisory. Lakes. Do you have anybody for lakes? Oh, that's the one that walked in, huh?
There was no representative here for the lakes. We have a draft version of the minutes for the most recent Lakes Committee meeting. Rick went over, continued to talk about the water sampling of all the lakes. The beach area continues to be well below the area that we would be concerned with. He's treated both the country club, Scottsdale, that's not accurate. We talked about the Lake Windsor drawdown. Also, the Lake Rangers made 4,649 guest contacts through the month, of which 669 were boaters.
Tom, what is he calling a contact?
If they approach anybody on the lake or in the parks and ask them for their member card, that's a contact. I made a report that the board of directors is creating a super committee, and we're requesting that 2 members from the Lakes Committee serve on that super committee, and they've already submitted those 2 names. In fact, all 4 of the joint advisory committees have submitted the names. Also, committee member Gracie attended the Community Involvement Committee meeting to discuss the idea of developing limitations on the number of guests that a dependent can bring. We feel that this could potentially help solve some of the challenges that we have at the lakes with the kids bringing the entire band with them, or football team, or whomever. And that's the report for the Lakes Committee.
Okay, very good. Recreation, go ahead.
Can I, do we, on this open forum, Judy Wilson here, do we still have a problem with boats and the wakes they cause on the lakes?
Well, that would probably depend upon who you speak with.
Okay.
Ms. Wilson does attend quite a number of the Lakes Committee meetings, and has issues with the lake, with the wake boats. The Lakes Committee did review this in detail last year, and they have not taken it up this year. If you recall, we expanded, at their request, we expanded the no-wake zone this year from 100 feet to 150 feet. And we also increased the number of lake rangers to make sure we had people stopping boats and so forth. But do keep in mind that we have 7 lakes, and we don't have a lake ranger on every lake every day. And so if the lake ranger is on Lake Windsor and the wake boat is on Loch Lomond, that's going to be a challenge. We do, when they sign up and they get their tag, we have in the brochure, the rules brochure, it calls out how far away they need to be from the shoreline. Whether they read this brochure and whether they abide by it is a challenge.
I understand, and I certainly don't want to take recreational boating privileges away from members, but it would seem to be a persistent problem.
It's a fairly small number of wake boats actually on the lake. It's just a handful, is it not?
Yeah, what I would recommend is, now that we're almost through the season, it may be a good idea for the board to ask the committee to reevaluate how the extension or expansion of the no-wake zone, how it worked, the addition of additional lake rangers, how that worked, and see if it was effective.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation, is just okay, we went through a season, we did these changes, did they work, did they not work? Do we need to take additional steps or continue on with what we did this year?
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Patrick?
Tom, I don't know the boat registration procedures well enough to answer this myself. When a person goes to get to register their boat, if they are operating a wake boat, is that fact identified?
No, it is not.
Would it be of any value to identify if they are operating a wake boat, and if so, what lake they'd be operating on?
I'm not the most knowledgeable person when it comes to boats and wake boats, but what I have been able to learn from the Lakes Committee is that the definition of a wake boat is changing quite a bit because of the industry. I think John Nuttall has commented in the past that you get a couple of his brothers together in the back of a boat, you have enough ballast to create a wake boat. Would that be an accurate quote, John?
That's a very good accurate definition of wake boat.
Okay,
It doesn't make a rule about wake boats. Doug would spend the next 3 months writing the definition. And not get one that would be able to rule it.
Okay, I take John and his girth as a good.
That was no reference to.
Yeah, it's his brother.
Okay. Okay, moving right along. Recreation. Gary, do you have recreation?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
Won't be here a while.
okay.
I won't be that long. Is this on? Yeah. Good. We had our meeting on August 13th. We had 7 of us in attendance off the committee. Tom was with us, Joan, Leah Bush, John, Judy Griffin, and Kim Carlson. We also had quite a few guests, Ruth, you being one. We also had Jason Lloyd, who was the new chairman of the golf committee, along with Jessica Hansen and Steve McKee, and Haas Diego, who was a volunteer who had talked to us previously about archery. So, from the amenity reports, most things look good. There's a couple of things that were brought up that John had an opportunity to talk about, like gravel washouts on London Park, and just a few maintenance things that needed to be taken care of. From Reardon Hall, Mary told us that there's a lot of out-of-town tennis players who are using the complex, and the employees have also done a great job of cleaning up the lobby area. So it's in. Tom?
No, you.
Okay. You had that look.
I was checking to see if someone from the golf committee was here.
Oh. All right. Let's see. Loch Lomond reports from the park. Electrical is being updated, and we found out about that after the fact as well. And when I was out at Tyree Park, there was some type of electrical work being done either through the city or through us as well, but it looked like quite a project. So we left it at that. We went over our 2019 budget recommendations review as well. We went over them. We had 21 to start. We reduced it by a couple. For some of the things that we looked at over the past couple of years, for some of us that have been on the committee, and I'm not going to go through these in detail, but some of these things have been on here before, but we talked about additional pickleball courts, maybe covering them. From the archery perspective, Haas Diego has brought us a lot of information. He had a survey that he put out as well to see how much interest there was in archery, and he will come back to us with more information as well. Branchwood Trailhead, distance markers, the Bocce Ball Country Club Welcome Center, can we keep it open longer, like on the weekends? And there's volunteers that may very well want to do that as well. The East Side Dog Park, we know that that's already in the 5-year plan, as well as looking at installing water filling stations, all the golf courses and all the amenities. Up to mini golf courses being refurbished, playground equipment, baseball field, beverage machines, east and west gardens for a community garden, signage for better compliance that I heard something about as it relates to lakes, and maybe have some signage about when it comes to all the noise and associated with lots of people gathering in one place. Granton Park was brought up a couple of times. Maybe we do an additional kayak launch site there. as well as perhaps in some way, shape, or form being able to turn that into amenity at some point in time. Because it's already got racks for kayaks, it's already got a biggest boat launch that we've got, as well as it's already got picnic amenities. So aside from taking a look at the slope and the runoff that happens there, we'd like to see something happen like that in the future. Aside from that, in our new business, we had discussed most of that as well. As the new working group that Tom had requested 2 people from, would be myself and Mary Henning. And our staff reports, but one last thing, the grand reopening of Branchwood had a lot of conversation about it before and during the meeting. And there's a lot of ideas that Joan took away from the group. And as of right now, we're wondering exactly what it might be, open on a soft opening, or if it's going to be 2 openings, or will it be? And Tom, maybe you can talk to that a little bit more.
We haven't set the date for the grand opening, but right now we're talking about the first part of October. With regards to the soft opening, once the building is 100% ready to go, we're going to open. We anticipate that will take place in the month of September, but we don't want to release that date until we're completely open. We learned our lesson in the opening of Lake Point and the opening of the country club, is that unforeseen things happen that are beyond your control. So we will open, and then we'll tell everybody we're open.
Exactly. It's a good idea. Last thing, Debbie Sorensen had announced a new resident meet and greet to be held September 8th here at the country club. There was over 60 people at the last one. And it's been something great that's happened, and on a consistent basis once again, and we'll continue to in the future. Any questions? Yeah.
Yes, Gary. Relative to the archery, there's a sentence in here: archery coaches, school principals, and thousands of archers are excited about having a place to shoot. Are we going to have a fee structure relative to the archery range as a revenue producer?
One of the things we've looked at is that from the perspective of other places, be it Rogers, Bentonville, in Missouri, there's a fee charged to use the archery course.
Okay, because
I'm not sure about 1,000.
No, I understand, but we'll start that old argument again amongst certain members of the POA that, there's people coming in that use our amenities for free. And if we can look at this type of situation and charge an appropriate or fair fee, if you will, maybe we can squelch a little bit of that. I don't know.
And through part of our conversations, we brought up fees and think it would be something that would be appropriate given the amounts that are being charged right now. We're doing the same thing. And Mr. Diego's going to bring that information to us based on the different places that he has visited. So we'll have it as a basis for moving forward in what our research and our due diligence will go ahead and look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Good, thank you.
Golf. Susan, do you have that?
The golf committee met on August 8th. We approved the the recommendation for the handicapped cart policy that would allow members who have a handicapped license from the state, they can get a flag to put on their golf carts, and they will be able to drive up very near to the greens and the tee boxes. We approved the input for the 2019 pricing and projects list. The projects were fairly modest in scope. Primarily, it is starting to build gold tee boxes, real tee boxes, and we recommended Country Club be the first course to get those. Also, working on ventilation in the bathrooms, especially in the summertime, and ice and water on the course, since they no longer put out ice in the coolers for the members. So, and there were a few other things in there, but those were the big ones. We elected our officers. Jason Lloyd is the chair, Phil Spencer is the vice chair, and I'm the secretary. Let's see, what else? Scottsdale, as far as I know, is still scheduled to open on September 1st.
28
Of August.
August.
Very good.
Tuesday.
Excellent. I think that's about all. The one other comment is this year was our first year for the Alzheimer's tournament, and we raised over $10,000, about $5,000 from sponsorships and about $5,000 from the golfers. So it was a very successful event.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Community involved, go ahead.
I do have
Excuse me.
a concern regarding the golf cart handicap flag policy.
Okay.
And my concern is not that we do it, I'm for that, it's just that for management and staffing at our check-in and our clubs and our pro shops, I'm very, very worried that check-in is just getting overburdened again with one more item. Some of the places, they serve food, they serve drinks, they check in golfers, they get their membership card, they get credit cards, they get cash, they have to write up tags for the golf carts now, and this is going to create another time-consuming burden keeping people in line at our pro shop check-ins, and that's my real concern about it.
I think that's a valid concern. I think we've gone through the policy, and possibly what we could add to it is if you're going to get a handicap flag, you need to check in half hour early or something to that nature before the rush.
I have concerns about the flag policy. In talking with other golfers who have been involved with a similar type policy in other cities, it can turn into a nightmare. The fact that we will be taking somebody's membership card or driver's license or something in exchange for handing them a card, flag to use that day may, allay some of those concerns, but like Jim says, they got a lot of things to do, and it's one of those things I feel like, you give them an inch and they take a mile. And I think, Susan, wasn't the 30 feet from a tee and a green?
Something like that, yes.
And we have people say, well, how far is that? Well, this room is more than 30 feet across. And I have a sneaking suspicion that some of those carts are going to get right up on the fringe of the green. And then what are we going to do?
Well, we discussed that and we decided we would live with it.
I have one other concern. I understand that, the purpose of this is to keep our golfers golfing as long as they're physically able to be out there. I would like the golf committee to consider suggesting that par threes might be open to golf cart traffic, because a lot of times it's way farther to walk to a poor shot off of a par three than it is to walk to the green or a tee box. And I understand the flags would be able to do that, is my understanding of it, but I know there are other courses that allow traffic on par threes. I'd like to start that discussion, and we talk about it for a while and just see what comes up for point and counterpoint.
I think that's a valid adjustment. Going back to your first point, yes, we know that there's going to be some abuse. There's going to be some people that are not going to follow the rules. They're going to get too close to the greens, and they're going to do this, they're going to do that. But I'd rather look to the majority of people that legitimately need the assistance and will keep them golfing longer. I'd rather focus on that, and we have player assistants out there that can go coach people and say, hey, you're too close to the green, you're gonna you're gonna push down the grass and make it a hard chip for the next person that comes along. I'd rather let's give it an experiment, let's see if it works. Hopefully there's not too much abuse, but there's quite a number of people that we may be able to keep golfing for a long period.
Our golf shops will not be determining who is handicapped and who isn't. It will be the state that determines that.
Yeah, they have to have they have
State
to have a
issue.
tag from the state. That way we stay out of the hole, whether the person is justified, unjustified, if they're sick, if they're, we don't want to go down that road. The state already has a system. We'll piggyback upon that.
Why couldn't they just use their state placard, display it on their cart, as opposed to another flag?
Too small.
Well, I don't know.
They may have a permanent license.
Yeah, if they
Some
were.
don't have the
Right,
paper.
or temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's pretty common. I mean, most places have flags of one sort or another. And when Philip has gone out and purchased the flags, they're blue. They have, it looks like the standard handicap logo, so it'll be easily identifiable to people. So they'll understand why the cart is so close.
For people who have their own carts, couldn't they be issued one for the year? A flag?
Well, some days you can't use it. If it's carts on path, there will be no flags issued, is that correct?
That's correct.
That
yeah.
was the recommendation.
Yeah, if it's a rainy day where there will be damage to the golf course, we won't issue flags for that day.
The maintenance people have told me that when they put out, the sign that says no carts, carts on path, it's because they feel that they cannot operate their equipment safely without damaging the fairways. So if they can't do it, nobody can be there. So there will be days when there are no flags issued. It's tough. That's the way it is.
If I understand this, the individual members would submit paperwork to golf operations stating how they're qualified for a handicap flag.
Correct.
Okay. So there will be these people will be designated as being able to receive a handicap flag. Will the system reflect that? Do we have any markers that when somebody comes to the course, the system will indicate that they qualify for a handicap flag?
We talked about that, and we decided that we did not want to keep that type of information in our system. Could potentially require other auditing issues for us if we're holding people's personally identifiable health information.
Okay,
So-
will they be given a card?
So the idea is, yes, that they will bring their information in at one time. They'll be issued a card that designates them as a handicapped golfer. It'll have an expiration date of December 31st of whatever year they use, unless it's a temporary. Then it will have an expiration date of what the temporary placard is. They'll be given that card, and they must bring that in each time they golf. They'll turn that card in exchange for a handicap flag.
That should facilitate the execution of the thing quite a bit. So.
And it's not just to help allow people to golf longer. It's also a legal consideration.
Right.
For Americans with Disabilities Act, you have to make a reasonable accommodation for people to access the course, and so it's not just to let people golf longer. There's a legal consideration there as well.
Okay. We might want to make some notation in the policy statement that they will be issued a card by golf operations, just to make sure that.
Yeah, we were just finalizing those details. The operational aspect of how it's going to work today. So it's
Okay.
fairly new.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else for golf? If not, community involvement. I think I did. Lily? Lily has community involvement today, do you? Okay.
About a foot shorter than whoever else. Hi, I'm Lily Ellicott, the Secretary of the Community Involvement Joint Advisory Committee. We met on August 2nd of this year. The meeting was called at 6 p.m. Grace from the Lakes Committee was joining us that evening to discuss rangers finding large parties often consisting of underage drinking and vandalism and how best to solve that issue. Tom brought to the board that the POA is looking to create a cross-functional committee between all POA joint advisory committees. Myself and Janae were nominated and approved for this committee. Tom also presented information about the POA committee orientation that our committee will be going over this next time. We discussed a recap of the Tailgates and Fireflies event that went well this year and discussed how better to do it next year. Next, the board discussed the coat drive and whether to have it strictly a coat drive this upcoming winter or have a coat and toy drive for Christmas, and decided on leaving it just coat drive. Plans for an upcoming fundraiser called Snowball was moved to the September meeting. Open discussion was mainly concerns about the upcoming community center and questions regarding that. Janae brought up some issues for hours on our facilities, and Tom explained all of those issues. Our meeting was adjourned at 7:37 p.m. Any questions? Yes.
I noticed that for the coat drive, the collections, unless I'm misreading the clubhouse, there are no POA locations for collections, like Reardon Hall or...
I believe there were last year.
Well, but they aren't.
There are, and there were last year, and there will be this year.
But they're not specified here, is what I'm saying.
Clubhouse is one.
I was trying to be brief. I can list them all in the future for you.
There's a bunch of them.
No, but what I'm saying is that in the minutes of the meeting, they're not listed.
Yeah.
And so, just to make sure that I got a bunch of coats. See?
Terrific.
They're gently used.
Gently.
Yeah, yes,
Fantastic.
we
We'll try and have a bin at all of the POA clubhouses.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
You have children's coats? We better not go there.
So no?
Thank you, Lily. Appreciate it.
Lily.
Okay, that concludes the advisory reports. Old business, at this time, we have none. We have a lot of new business. Recommendations of the Board of Directors from the 5-year Financial Planning Task Force.
On page 43 of your board packet, you'll see that back in January, the board requested or put together the 5-year Financial Planning Task Force. The goal of this task force was to assess the current financial state of the POA, forecast the financial state of the POA, to anticipate major capital projects during that 5-year period, to analyze all existing and possible new sources of revenue, expense savings, external funding, and if forecasted there would be if there is a financial shortfall, the possibility of an assessment increase, and to formalize a recommendation back to the board by June 30th, and this was subsequently extended to August 7th. The board, the 5-year financial planning task force did go through and do the assessment, forecast, anticipation, and analysis, and they came back with the following recommendations. First of all, to undertake the 10 expense savings and revenue generating programs that were put together by the committee, by the task force. Now keep in mind that the task force started with quite a larger number than 10. I think it was 10 or 20 or 25, but they narrowed it down to the top 10. And ultimately, the additional recommendation that they made was to take the improved assessments from 24 to 34, and for unimproved from 16 to 18. You'll notice on the attached financial report, it details all of the expenditures and the receipt of additional revenue. And at the end of the 5-year period, there would be a cash surplus of $790,000. It was determined that having this surplus would be prudent, since over a 5-year period there are bound to be unpredictable events that would take place. Let me step back. I skipped one item. In determining the increases for the assessment, one of the analysis that was done was they looked at, since 2001, which is the last year there was an increase in the assessments, from 2001 through this year, if you take the cost of living increases that are used for Social Security and were to apply that to the $24, the same increases year by year, for 2019, that dollar amount would come out to $33.91, hence the recommendation of 34. Do keep in mind that Social Security may be adjusted, and those numbers may come out in October. And if there was an additional increase, it would potentially go above the $33.91, but the committee decided to go with 34. So you see on the bottom of page 45 and into page 46 are the recommendations. Are there any questions from the board?
Just one question regarding the 5-year financial pro forma, probably for you and Bruce and Dwayne. I am assuming that the annual emergency reserve fund would be retained each year in this pro forma.
Yeah,
to the tune of what, 1.2?
Yeah. Right now it's a little bit below that, but yes, you are correct. We are maintaining that amount, and then on the water side, we also have an emergency fund, and so that was not taken into account on this because we would leave that intact.
Okay, do you have the list of things that have been done?
Yep.
Okay. In addition, one of the concerns at the time was the revenue that we have generated and taken out, the expenses, et cetera, taken out, and last 2 years, we've had major items taken out, so he's going to show that to give us a perspective of where we are.
Okay, so what we did was we went through and we looked at some of the key cost savings and revenue generating ideas that have been put into effect since 2016. The first off, we made an adjustment to the time off benefit plan. This adjustment reduced our liability by $764,000. If you go through the balance sheet and compare 2016 to 2017, you'll see that adjustment was made. We also switched medical companies and TPAs, or third-party administrators. The first year savings from 16 to 17 was $179,000. We switched our insurance broker for liability, casualty, and workman's comp. We were able to get better coverage for about the same cost. We were also able to recover a $40,000 savings on our auto insurance after an audit was done on our coverage. We changed our credit card processing company, which generates an $8,000 savings annually. We recently, in 2018, we consolidated at a director level position, which should have an annual savings of approximately $80,000. And Keith and myself are currently renegotiating our golf course equipment leases that are coming due this year. And at this point, we anticipate there will be an annual savings of between $25,000 and $30,000, although it has not yet been determined because we are not done with the negotiations. But we're receiving bids from 3 different companies. On the revenue side, the collections team has been doing a very good job. If you recall, in 2016, we really didn't have a collections team, and we had to restart that. We had $562,000 worth of collections from those direct efforts. 129 of that is recovered revenue, which is money we had written off and we had never expected to collect. For 2018, so far this year, we've collected $540,000. 72,000 of that was recovered revenue.
Tom,
Yes.
on 2018, what is the budgeted number for collections?
He's going to research that. We're going to come back.
Okay, that's fine.
Our collections department, unimproved lots, the collections on delinquencies for major lot owners from 2016 to 17, we improved by $370,000. Lot sales in 17 were $206,000, an increase of $77,000 over 2016. And year-to-date, lot sales are at $138,000, although for whatever reason, this month has been a banner month, and we've been selling quite a number of those. I think I sent an email to the board letting them know, and we've actually sold quite a number since that email went out. 14 additional ones. For whatever reason, we're having a very, very good month. Lake Rangers now have the ability to swipe a credit card, so they can collect fees as they apprehend people.
Encounter
people. Not a huge amount of money, but $4,600 will take it. Also, now this does not impact the POA P&L, but it does have a direct impact on our employees. In 16, we renegotiated the 401k manager. It increased the service and it decreased the administration fee. It cut it in half, which was $20,000 annually. The employees bear the burden of this expense, so it helped out our employees by cutting this expense. And
I have year-to-date past due collection budget. It's $164,000, and we've collected the past dues $228,000.
Thank you.
And the reason why this was brought up by one of our board members, and the reason why, I don't want to interpret anything, but I think the comment is, are we doing our part to cut expenses and generate revenue, or are we just looking to the property owners for an increase in the assessments without considering other avenues? And we wanted to demonstrate that we have considered other avenues.
And I'd like to add that this would be really good evidence to mention specifically in a assessment increase packet of what accomplishments in savings we've done the past years. I think we've pretty much skinned the cat since we hired you. And I think the other real big item is that we didn't fill a lot of labor positions. We couldn't find people. And secondly, the other plaudit to you is you have combined, I believe, back in late 16, where we had 24 departments down to 14. Mm-hmm. And now, recently, we have each of them standalone cost centers and revenue centers, and that's going to help as well. But I mean, all in all, you can see how much better we did to the budget the last 2 years, but this year is tighter because you're starting to fish for items too to save money.
We're competing against ourselves now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
but a lot of these are continuing. Some
Yes,
are
yes,
one
some of
time.
these are, some of them were one-time shots, and some of them are ongoing. And we tried to notate that when it was necessary, because, you know, some of them were, the liability change, the $700,000 change, that was a one-time shot. That's not every single year, but that was a significant win. So.
Thank you.
I'm going to agree with Jim that, you know, I think we're going to pass an opportunity for the membership to increase their assessment. And, you know, that's the first step. And then we need to get the information out to the membership and the community about what has been happening, because, you know, we all see the negative comments and how we're doing such a terrible job and we're just spending all the money and we're doing this and we're doing that. And we're here, we see the numbers, we know we're not, but we have to get this information out, you know, with the ballot to make the case that, you know, the last 2 years we've done a lot of good things for Bella Vista, and with an assessment increase, we can do more. We can make Bella Vista more than it is today.
And quite frankly, there's times that I'm the person that's at fault, because, you know, I asked Dwayne to put this presentation together for me, and I have a tendency, we get a win and then I'm just on to the next project and kind of forget to tell the board that we've had a win. So.
Yeah, well, you know, I was having a conversation with somebody about the, you know, proposed assessment increase and the negative comments that come down and the illogical arguments that hit the newspaper and Facebook and all that. And this person said to me, you know, you can't reason with something that's illogical, because they'll just find something else to pick on. So our attempt, we're going to ask the reasonable property owners to pass an assessment increase. And there will be some who will never vote for it. And that's okay, they can not vote for it. But I want to see Bella Vista become more.
And I think that's the most telling thing. I had a conversation with a property owner just a few days ago, and this individual was a real estate agent. And I asked the individual, when was the last time we had an assessment increase? And they said 5, 6 years ago. And I said, no, it's been 2001. And they were very shocked, very surprised.
Patrick?
When I joined the board, Tommy Bailey was the general manager. And not to be reflecting on him, but the situation, the financial situation of the POA was that we had millions and millions of dollars in reserves. We had buildings that were crumbling around us, but we had millions and millions of dollars of reserves. We had done very little in terms of improving our amenities. If we did anything at all, we simply maintained them, and not really that very much of that. The POA, being a nonprofit organization, I was struggling with the idea that we had millions and millions of dollars in reserve, and we are a nonprofit. And I thought, what are we doing with millions of dollars of reserves when we should be investing that money in maintaining our facilities, maintaining our amenities, improving our amenities, improving our operations? And I was very anxious as a board member to spend money. And I wanted to spend money because we needed so much and we're giving so little to improvements. And I have, since I've been a board member, have been probably 100, that's probably an over 100%, 90% in favor of everything that we have tried to do in terms of improvements. We hired Tom Judson shortly after I joined the board. And the reason we hired Tom Judson is because we thought he could lead us into the future. And I think he has done that. But now that we have spent down our reserves, we're not in desperate shape because we still have some emergency funds. But at the same time, it's time for us to look forward to where we're going to go and begin to accumulate the funds that are necessary to take us into the 2020 decade. And I hear people talking about us throwing away money, and I challenge anybody in the community to be able to point to one or two things that were wildly inappropriate. What we did and what Tom has done has always been in the best interest of this community, and our movement towards an assessment increase is an attempt to ensure that that continues into the future.
Okay, thank you, Pat. I think with the 5-year plan, it also sets in place what we have planned for the next 5 years, and it's pretty well decided that we can get there through these efforts. And I think that's important. My understanding is we have several motions that need to be made separately here.
Yeah, if you turn to page 50 of your board packet, based upon the recommendations from the 5-year financial planning task force, what we did was we went through and divided it out into 4 separate motions that would need to be done individually.
I would like to move that we make a motion to further explore, not to undertake the following revenue-generating programs, but to further explore and examine cost-benefit in detail as each of these are explored. The programs recommended by the 5-year financial planning task force, including open additional days at the trap and skeet range, adding 4 glamping pods to Blowing Springs, which I believe is part of our budget proposal for next year, stop leasing the marina, have the POA operate it, create a central sales force, and launch a vacation rental business. I believe all of those are valid to further bring back to the board cost-benefit type studies to make sure they are worthwhile to continue to look into. But that'd be my change, that we don't necessarily undertake them yet, but each item, A, B, C, D, and E, we get into the details of it.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion?
Okay, since we changed it up front, we don't need to make any other recommendations.
No.
Any discussion?
I agree with Jim. It's 5 different steps. Each one should stand on its own, and we can go forward and, continue to explore. They're not all going to happen at once. So as we gather the information, we will make a prudent decision at that time, but the full intention that this is where we're headed.
Any other discussion? If not, call for a vote.
All in favor?
2.
2. No in opposition, motion carries.
Okay, second item.
Motion number 2, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, once again, on motion number 2, I would make a motion to explore in detail the following expense-saving programs which were recommended by the 5-year financial planning task force. Discontinue taking American Express, encourage e-billing, This will cut down on printing and mailing costs, encourage e-statements for assessments. This will cut down on printing and mailing costs, connect Kingsdale Building to Reardon Hall with wireless network access. This allows us to pay for internet access at only one location. And E, extend voice over internet phone system, which will improve reliability, but plus cost less. My example is discontinue taking American Express. I'm sure the financial planning task force looked at this, and American Express is a costly venture, but how much will this hurt us on revenue? I'm guessing you've already explored it some, but that's why I say we explore it further and have the board then see details on these matters.
Second that motion.
Discussion.
My only concern, both with this motion and the one before, is to explore. And it just occurred to me that I would almost amend that to say explore and take action upon as soon as it is appropriate, the following, okay? And I'm a little bit, just to explore, I want to make sure that we take action.
And to be clear, all these ideas, the expense side, the revenue side, have been vetted by the respective manager that submitted them, and Dwayne and myself have explored them. So we feel comfortable that we're not going down a bad path, but I don't have a problem with how Jim phrased it as explore. I think that gives us enough directive to move forward. And as David pointed out, you're correct that we can't launch 10 programs at one time. We'd be launching programs instead of taking care of customers. So it gives us the flexibility that we need.
Well, if you're comfortable with that, I'm fine, but I just want to make sure that, we...
You comfortable with it?
Yeah.
Just a quick question. When we're looking at that, and I agree with Jim and what we've said, can we have the pluses and minuses of this, say, by the time we have the next work session or the GM meeting?
Sure,
Is that
absolutely.
data available in like a spreadsheet format so that we can see it? I think that would help me as well as everyone else. And I know you guys have already done the work, so just a matter of printing it out.
We'll provide you a copy.
Any other discussion? If not, call for a vote.
All in favor of this motion as amended by Jim? Any opposed? Is that an abstention? You voted yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Voting's unanimous.
Okay, motion 3, to increase the improved lot assessment from $24 a month to $34, with the increase going into effect in January of 2019, and increase unimproved lot assessments from $16 per month to $18, with the increase going into effect in January 2019, with both increases incorporated into one single vote. So you vote yes or no on both at the same time. The vote will be commenced in October of this year. And the reason being, taking effect in January 1, I need discussion first on it.
Are you making that motion?
I'm making that motion.
Okay, second.
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion. The reason being January 1, if we delay it longer, we lose up to $2 million over the course of a year, as it goes, up to.
We had a discussion about that, Patrick and I and Tom earlier today, and there is some flexibility there where we could prorate if it went into the into another year.
Okay.
So
So every month we wait, we're losing money.
yeah,
Yeah, if you were to wait, say, 3 months, which would be a reasonable amount of money, you're talking $500,000. So it doesn't change the moral of the story is that a delay costs a significant amount of money.
Okay, any other discussion?
Yeah, I do have some comments regarding the motion. The reason I'm 100% for it is We have done our due diligence. We've not been arbitrary and capricious. We may be challenged. However, this past 8 months, we have done some really wonderful, important studies. A hydrology study was done, pointed out the valley problems. We also, based on the results of that study and board recommendations, we hired a golf course consultant to determine how many courses we probably need in the future based on current play. And then secondly, we hired architects recently to come up with the specifics for revitalizing and improving the floodproofing of Country Club Golf Course. And we had a golf task force look at the board's recommendations in April, and they came up with some recommendations regarding each of the golf facilities that were quite similar to what our April recommendations were. And most importantly, we have a 5-year financial plan that is got quite a bit of detail in it, and to me is the main basis for my support of this proposal at this time.
Any other discussion? Call for vote.
All in favor? Any opposed? Voting is unanimous.
And probably one of the most important ones for the community is I make a motion if the increase in assessment is approved by the community, no other increases in assessment will be considered by this board and community until after 2024. So this is a 5-year plan, and we expect it to last the 5 years without additional asking for assessment increase.
Second, David. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Voting is unanimous.
On page 53 of your board packet, if you recall that the board assigned a committee to investigate the hiring of an architect for the country club. The committee was Jim Abrahamson, Keith Eames, myself, and David Welchel as a non-voting advisor. The goal I've listed on this memo to stabilize the stream banks, to correct any current damage, and to limit future damage caused by flooding was the first goal. The second goal was to renovate the golf course so there is an improved possibility of the course surviving future floods with only limited damage. Number 3, raise and buttress select tees and greens to keep them above the 100-year flood line and limit damage of future floods. Number 4, once completed, the renovated areas should have the same look and feel of the rest of the golf course. The committee initially interviewed 6 candidates, narrowed it down to the top 3, brought those top 3 here at their expense, interviewed them, toured the golf course, and we received proposals from all of them. Now, a little interesting in that the bid structure is twofold. First is the initial cost of the master plan, and then the second portion is the construction fee, the management of the process, which is a percentage. Our initial estimate for the construction is $1.5 million, so we use that $1.5 million as the basis of the percentage. So if you turn to page 55, you'll see that Colligan Design came with a base fee of $45,000. They anticipated, or they bid a 7% construction fee, so the total cost would be $150,000 if the entire project were to be completed. George Golf came with a slightly lower base fee, but the exact same construction fee, and Staples had the lowest base fee, but the highest construction fee, and they came out at $178,000. So in the analysis, of looking at the qualifications, the committee determined that George Golf Design, in their opinion, was the most qualified because of the work that they've done at different golf courses in correcting flooding issues. When they came down and made their presentation, they showed us a number of different examples that were very impressive. Also, over the, assuming that we do the entire project, which is what you would assume, you're not going to just do the master plan without actually doing the work. They came out, George Design came out to be the lowest. But I do want to point out that the base fee for Staples was lower, but the construction fee was higher. So all in all, George Golf Design, in our opinion, was the best choice to go with. And that is the recommendation that we are making to the board.
Our estimate was
$500,000.
$350,000 over what they're quoting.
Say that again.
No, that's 7% of the total will be their construction cost. That's not the construction cost.
7% of 1.2.
Got it.
Okay. We need to call for a vote before we discuss it.
Yeah,
Call for a motion.
A motion, yeah.
Go ahead.
Anyone want to make a motion on this?
I make a motion to select the most qualified candidate, George Golf Design, for the renovation of the country club course to limit the damage of future floods. Additionally, I authorize the management spending $43,000 with $31,800 of the funding coming from the cancellation of the 2018 capital project for the master plan for Highland Golf Course.
Mary seconds. Any discussion?
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, the last sentence of that ending paragraph, the vote to select George Golf Design is limited at this time to just the master plan. There is no commitment at this time that the entire project will go forward. What are the conditions under which the total project would not go forward?
If the assessment increase is rejected, we would not have the $1.5 million and we would not be able to move forward.
Okay.
Have any of these architects done any work in the area on our courses?
The only one that has done anything in Arkansas would have been Andy Staples, and all he has done is a master plan for Fayetteville Country Club with no construction.
Okay, and the George Design was because of the flood experience and,
That's correct.
okay, and that's what we asked him to do in the first
He has
place.
extensive experience
Okay.
in flood remediation projects.
And it allows us to do parts of the project as money becomes available. So if we do the initial and decide we want to do more as money comes available, we can use the same plans to do it.
That would be the point of the master plan. We can do it over a 5 or a 10-year period as we choose, as funds come available.
Okay.
And one point of clarification, in the 2018 capital budget, we originally were going to do work at Highlands Golf Course. We're going to develop a master plan, and so the board at that time had approved $31,800 towards that. That's been placed on hold. So in effect, we're asking for the difference, which is $11,200.
What was that 31.8 going to cover?
It was going to be the development of a master plan for Highlands Golf Course.
Okay. So we're just switching it, a master plan for Country Club versus a master plan.
Clearly, because of the flooding that we've been
Right.
experiencing, the country club takes precedence.
Okay.
Any other discussion? If not, call for a vote.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Good job, and we appreciate.
Are you going to cover Scottsdale? Tarps?
May I back
Yeah,
up
did I
there a
skip
minute,
that one?
Doug?
It's not in.
Doug, may I
Yes.
back up? I'm going to abstain from that vote.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize.
We
I
did skip
skipped
that.
one of the memos.
Sorry about that.
If you can back up to page 53. You'll see that Keith is requesting the expenditure of $17,000 in capital funds for the purchase of heavy-duty tarps to be used at Scottsdale Golf Course to protect the greens during the wintertime. We will hold on to the other tarps that we currently have in place, and when the forecast is for a really extreme weather, we will use both of them to double up the protection and get them through the first few years, which is when they're most susceptible to the harsh winter. You'll see that we're getting these tarps at 10 cents per square foot, which is at cost, and this compares to prices that we've looked at, which range between 18 cents per square foot and 22 cents per square foot. So we're requesting the approval of this. Any questions?
I make a motion to approve the capital project for Scottsdale Golf Course to purchase protective winter tarps for $17,000. We have a second. Okay. Discussion.
Any opposed? All in favor, I mean? Then any opposed? Great.
One thing at a time.
Can we repeat that?
One thing at a time. Okay, now we're moving on.
On page 56 of your packet, you'll see the community survey that was put out. We sent it out to 19,000 people on our that we had email addresses for. A total of 2,564 people responded. And you'll see as you go down the questions, question number 1, you see that 98% of those individuals were property owners. If they answered that they were not a property owner, that was their last question. You'll also see how they ranked the different recreational amenities that they currently use, with Tanyard Creek on top with 42%, Reardon Hall, Blowing Springs, Loch Lomond, and so forth. Also, we had questions regarding the number of people that live in your household. And on page question 4 was within the last 12 months, how many have you brought friends or family to use the recreational amenities? And almost 51% voted yes. How many support the building of a new community center in Bella Vista? 62% voted yes, but interestingly, 700 people declined to answer. Really no way to determine why they didn't. Possibly it was they needed more information. We gave them a long list of items that they could select from, and we asked them to list the top 5 activities for a new community center, and they came out to be a fitness center with cardio, indoor pool, meeting rooms, indoor walking track, and a community lounge. Are there any other activities not listed that you would like to see? Bike parking and storage and Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi we have at all of our buildings, so that would not be an issue. And other comments are listed below. Any questions regarding the survey?
I think it was interesting noted that after 1,000, the first 1,000, the percentage of each of them changed very little. So when you got from 1,000 to 2,500, the percentages stayed pretty well the same. So it doesn't take a huge survey amount after so many to get consistency.
It's a survey. You're not polling the entire community. But as Ruth indicated, we were tracking the results, for example, on question number 5, where it indicates if you were in favor. When we hit 1,000, it was 62%. When we hit 2,000, it was 62%. And when we finished at 2,500, it was 62%. So one would assume that if you got all the way to 5,000 or 10,000, it'd probably be 62%. Any questions on that?
Tom, was it clear to the respondents that the building of the community center would be dependent upon the assessment increase?
Send those down your way.
I'm not certain if they understood that or not. We simply, no, actually, I know the answer to that question. I apologize. If you recall, when we made the presentation regarding the community center, we didn't talk about money at all. We wanted to talk about the veracity of the idea to begin with, because at those meetings, we wanted to see, and with the survey, we wanted to see what the community was telling us and what was important, and how can you get a complete understanding of the cost of the building unless you know what needs to be included in there. So no, we did not say, do you support the new community center and it's going to require an assessment increase, because we didn't know the full costs or structure.
But since this survey was taken, I can't point out exactly, but I know that I have heard in several meetings and both public meetings and maybe read several places about the probable cost range of the new community center. Okay, that has not been kept secret. Okay, it's not something.
We didn't have it at that meeting.
No, but I mean that over the course of the next several weeks since that meeting happened, it was quite clear, and nobody was trying to hide what the cost of this community center would be.
Yeah, and I think Lynn covered it in one of her articles, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm. So any accusation that we have been secretive about this is hogwash. And so I want that to be recognized, that the board has been as forthcoming as possible about the potential cost of this new community center, and still has determined that expenditure of funds would benefit the community. But nobody has hidden this, as has been accused by several prominent members of our community, whose names shall be go without mention. Thank you.
We handed out a memo, or Leah handed it out. You'll see that with the board's decision to move forward with the assessment vote, that we would need approval from the board to hire the inspectors of election. This is the company that we've been using since 2016. We went out for competitive bidding at that time, and they've done 4 votes for us so far, assessment votes and board votes, and we've been very pleased with their service. Leah contacted them, and they informed us that by using them for a second time this year, we would enjoy a discount. We would like to receive approval from the board to authorize the expenditure of $38,000 to hire TIE, but do recognize that we're asking for the board to grant us a waiver on the 3-bid process.
So move.
Second.
Any
Discussion.
All in favor? Any opposed? Yes.
Even though this is walked in, Mike gave me blanket proxy, as well as voting for the assessment to move forward. I assume he expects to pay for it, so
Yeah.
I'm going to vote yes for him also.
All right. So
I would like to bring up a point, and I'll check with Doug on this. Our declarations and covenants specify that there be a 30-day period before which the meeting, being the point of a vote, could take place. That there's 30 days before. I would like to suggest that this meeting tonight, since we as a board have voted for an assessment increase, to propose an assessment increase to the membership, that this meeting tonight marks the start of that clock towards the 30-day accomplishment of that requirement.
It has to
Okay,
be a
so-
minimum of 30 days.
A minimum of 30 days.
Minimum of 30 days. So theoretically then, we could have the meeting on the 24th of September, but it's not going to be then, but nevertheless, we could. But just to make sure there's notice that this starts the clock.
That's when the vote starts, isn't it?
No, it's the meeting when you announce the tabulation, that's
So-
the meeting date.
The board's vote, does that qualify notice, or should Pat should Pat make a motion that we're giving notice, the board is giving notice right now?
I would consider Pat's
Yes.
statement to be a motion. If someone wants to second that this,
Right, and I'm-
today's meeting constitutes notice to the membership.
By clarification, we are happy to have Lynn here from the Bella Vista, the Vista. We are televising this meeting. We will be broadcasting this meeting. People are free, as I understand it, people are free to view this meeting right now. And so it represents at least the first step in that process. So I would move that we recognize that fact.
Is there a second? Mary? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Mike's voting
Mike's
yes
vote
on that
yes.
one too.
You're voting yes on that.
So Tom, can you lead us through the remaining months of the year for when an actual vote might occur? Because we've got to get packets, presentations.
Yeah, we got
groups.
we have a tentative schedule that has been put together, but we're still working on it. What our goal right now is, we're looking at an October 1 where the ballots would go out, which would give us more than the 30 days, but also allow us to get completely organized. Leah would have to contact the elections committee and get them mobilized. So now that the board has made that vote, we got a lot of work ahead of us.
And part of the reason for what I brought up is that there may be some argument about when that process begins, and so at least we've nailed it down that it begins
Absolutely.
tonight.
Absolutely. Moving forward on page 59 of your board packet, the Rules and Regs Committee met. The minutes were in your board packet, and there were some adjustments made to this. Pat, if you'd like to, Jim, if you'd like to cover this?
Okay, we had an initial meeting, and then a week later we followed up, and the initial meeting came up with an outline for the creation of this special committee, and then subsequently, at the same time, I should say, committee members from each of the JACs have been recommended by the committees. 2 from community involvement, 2 from golf, 2 from recreation, 2 from the lakes, and then 3 POA board members as well involved in the recommendation. And rather than a full charter, Rules and Regs Committee and the board, we've done minutes from Rules and Regs, and we invite this committee to get itself going and to declare a name for itself rather than us declaring it, and furthermore to use this outline of their function as a guide to get started. And we're hopeful that this group can get started rather quickly. And the first topic that was elicited was the look at Burksdale South, which was recommended initially by the Golf Task Force people, that could be a process that would involve not just golf, but recreation and perhaps other uses as well. And then other items would be developed over time by that committee. So that's the outline at this point.
And I have one question, one correction. On page 60, item number 10, it says 2 board members. That was the original thought, is we were going to have 2 board liaisons. And I was going through the governing documents, looking for something completely unrelated, and I realized that that per our regulations, we have to have 3. I added the 3rd name, but I didn't change it from 2 to 3, so. Lucky you.
And this does not take a vote. Is that correct? This does not take a vote. Okay, anything else for the good of the cause? If not, the GM meeting is Thursday, September 13, 2:30 in the boardroom. This is a closed session. Board of Directors work session is Thursday, September 20th at 9 o'clock. Notice the change, rather than 8, it's at 9 o'clock in the morning in the boardroom.
And that's a going forward change.
That's going forward. That's not a one-time change, that's going forward. So whenever. It's Country Club, and please note the change, and don't forget to write it on your calendar. And the Board of Directors regular meeting is Thursday, September 27th at 6:30 in the Board of the Country Club. And these are all open meetings.
Can I bring something up?
Sure.
It is the birth date of our very own Leah Bush. She's celebrating her 8th annual 29th birthday. So if you could wish her a happy birthday.
Very good. Very good.
Annual 29.
Daniel. Every woman wants to hear that. Okay, if there's nothing further, we will adjourn. Thank you. Every woman wants to hear that. 8th annual.